I love this man's work, and his new show is dynamite. He is an executive producer and director of Severance, which is available now on Apple TV, Apple TV Plus. New episodes releasing every Friday, starring friend of the program, Adam Scott. How about this rest of this cast? In part, John Turturro, Patricia Arquette, and Christopher Walken. Joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show is Ben Stiller. How you doing, Ben?
Hey, Rich. How's it going? I'm doing well, thanks.
I'm thrilled to have you here on this program. Before you joined us, I read out my residual checks, my foreign royalty statement from SAG-AFTRA. What is the longest ago check you receive for any small amount of money, 5 cents or anything like that? Which one is that for you?
Oh, wow. I go way back, Rich.
Mm-hmm.
I've been around for a while.
Yes.
So, I'd say maybe like Kate and Allie.
A Kate
and Allie episode. Yeah.
What were you doing? Who were you in Kate and Allie back in the day?
I was
Ben?
I was a young. She was like when Kate or Allie, I forget who, went back to school. As an adult, and I was in her class at community college, and I was a student activist. And we were protesting something that was going on. That's all I remember. And I remember that it was at the Ed Sullivan Theater. That's where they taped episodes, which was really exciting.
Really?
And and I still, every once in a while, like a $10, $8 check comes in for that.
For Kate and Allie. So was that a very special episode of Kate and Allie back in the day? Ben?
It was. I don't think it was no. It was a sort of not special episode. It was a run of the mill episode.
1986.
Okay.
You played a character named Peter.
Peter.
Too Late the Rebel was the name of the episode.
There you go.
That's right.
Check your mailbox now. You never know.
And then maybe also maybe I did Miami Vice too back around that time, and that comes in every once in a while.
Miami Vice. Did you last the episode, or were you?
I was one scene. I was an informant who worked at a religious goods store, and Crockett came in to ask me some information. Brian Dennehy was the main guest star. He was the real guest star, and I just had a scene.
Oh. In a religious store, huh? Is that what you're saying?
It was called Amen Send Money was the name of the...
wow. We're looking it up.
He was like one of those satellite preachers, and that was very exciting because I got to go down from New York, and that was a big job to get for an actor back then, to get a spot on Miami Vice. My God.
So I guess in a way, if this was like a Kevin Bacon thing, I've done many CSI Miamis. I've done some of those. I played I played a reporter, and then also myself. I did that once. So
did you say I only caught the end of it, but you said draft day? Are you in draft day?
I am in draft. This is cool. Ben, this is an amazing story. Okay, I'm in draft day. Yes, I'm in draft day, and we recorded my scene, if you will, at Radio City Music Hall on the Friday of the 3-day draft, and they shot me doing my normal NFL Network draft night material on Thursday and asked me to wear the same clothes for Friday for continuity purposes, as you know.
Right.
And so because I had my day job or my night job with the NFL Network or the draft, I mean, it's a bear of an assignment. So I didn't really look at my scene. I figured, you know what, I'll just wing the lines. And then it's time to do the scene, and it's with Frank Langella, like the real deal, like a real, dude, a real actor. And he comes, that's an understatement to call him that. And he comes up to me, he says, "Do you want to run through our lines?" And I panicked because I had no idea what my lines were, and I panicked. Like I didn't do, not since the third grade when I didn't do my homework. Like it literally was a panic moment for me. But it was amazing. So I have been in a scene with Frank Langella. Ben Stiller.
I mean Frank Langella is a great actor and intimidating to most very seasoned actors too. So to be jumping in with him and not knowing your lines is like a bad dream that I would have, because I literally do have dreams like the the sort of cliche actor's nightmare dreams of not knowing my lines or not, not being prepared for something. But that's like literally, that would be scary.
So Ben Stiller here, Apple TV Plus's Severance. He's the director and executive producer of the show, and we'll get to that in a second. So what is it like to be hooked up to a lie detector with Robert De Niro asking the questions? What is that like?
Oh, man.
What is that like?
That whole experience was sort of felt like, every day being in that sort of like under the, his eye, and like sort of, I think he made it because he's a method actor. He didn't make it easy for me. He wanted me to always feel uncomfortable. He really did feel like that the whole time. And, and Bob, because now I do call him Bob.
Yes.
He's such a sweet guy, but like he really understood what the dynamic was there. And you never know, because he could be like, he would really, every once in a while he would laugh at something, and then every once in a while he'd get really, really mad about something, and you never knew which way it was going to go. And of course, when he'd get angry, it's like the De Niro that we all, fear, the Goodfellas De Niro. So it was very fun. I didn't have to act at all. I just sort of existed through that movie.
I love that. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I've seen that movie so many different times and in so many different places. I've seen it on a plane, and at 35,000 feet. I've never been on a plane where every person, it was on one of those old school planes where everyone was watching the same thing. I've never heard a plane laugh hysterically quite like that film and that scene in particular. And I thought, so was that ad-libbed in any way, or were those lines actually nailed?
I mean, it was all, we worked on the script, and at that time, every day we would come in and maybe make little tweaks, and Bob would try stuff, but I don't remember doing a lot of improvising, except it's the kind of thing you throw something in every once in a while, but the improv kind of comes sometimes when you're working with the writer and the director to kind of figure out stuff. And Jay Roach directed the movie. He was a great comedy director, did Austin Powers, and he was awesome at being able to get people to play around and have fun. But also, you knew what you did going in. You weren't having to make it up at the time.
I love it. And then, do you have a good Brett Favre story from back in the day? Ben Stiller, you got a good Favre story for me?
I mean, I remember. No, I don't really have. I remember. That actually was an improv in that movie where I don't quite know how to pronounce his name. Richard Brett Favre or whatever. That was because I literally didn't understand how to pronounce his name. And, still don't know.
Because it's funny, we had the Farrelly brothers on the first year of this show 8 years ago, and they told us that you did have trouble pronouncing his name. So that is true? That was...
Yeah, totally true. Yeah. But every day on that movie was an adventure, because, the Farrellys would have so much fun making a movie. They at first you're like, what is going on here? Because they really didn't take it seriously. But cut to 20 years later, Pete Farrelly wins Best Picture Oscar. The guy does know what he's doing. But the fun thing was that you kind of every day you go is this going to be an actor? Is this Frank Langella, or is this their guy who repaired their phone last week? It's just there's no just be friends, family, and then real actors too. And every day they just be and doing crazy jokes that are very inappropriate jokes on the set and things like that. And yet that was their they created such a fun atmosphere, and I think that's what made that movie fun. Is nobody really knew what was going on most of the time, but that's kind of intentional, I think, with them. They wanted to keep that energy.
Ben Stiller here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's get to Severance. What a brilliant idea this is, certainly for our times.
It's a really interesting, it's an interesting, idea that Dan Erickson, who wrote the show, came up with, because I think he was working at a really boring job, and he thought one day, what if I could just shut off my brain when I went to work and not have to think about this at all? And then when I left work, I'd forget it even happened. And so he came up with this idea of a guy who works at a company where they put a chip in your brain, and you can basically, when you go down the elevator, you forget everything about your life on the outside, and you have your work day. And then when you leave and you go up in the elevator, the chip gets activated and you forget everything that happened at work. So you have these two selves, an innie and an outie. And he went from there with it.
And, Adam Scott, who I adore, he is in this as well. Patricia Arquette, who you have worked with before to tremendous effect in Escape at Dannemora. And then Christopher Walken, how did he get involved? What What's that like directing him, Ben? What's that like for you?
Well, Chris, I mean, it's actually interesting because we cast John Turturro as one of the workmates for Adam at work, but then John's character has he meets somebody at work down there, and a character named Bert, and we hadn't cast that person, and I was talking to him about doing the show, and he said, "Well, have you cast Bert?" I said, "No, we haven't." He said, "Well, what do you think about Chris Walken?" And I was like, "I think he's great. I'm a big fan of Chris Walken." I don't know if he'd do our show, but I mean, he's awesome. And he's like, "Well, can I ask him?" And John actually asked Walken if he'd be interested in doing the show, and that's how we got him.
No kidding. So Turturro's like, "Hey, if you cast that guy, let me just give Chris Walken a call."
And it was kind of this dream casting that I really never thought, we actually have in the show, but it made a lot of sense because they have a lot of stuff together. I don't want to, no spoilers, but
right.
He, and working with Chris is amazing. He's one of the sweetest guys. I'm honestly such a professional. He has a lot of lines in the show, and he would come in every day, had his lines down perfectly, just would go do his thing, sit in his chair, then go do the scene, and really just. And of course, everybody's there is going, "Oh my God, we're doing a scene with Chris Walken," and so he has that. He's aware of that's around him all the time. But he's so gracious and cool. And I actually worked with him years ago. I did a movie with him that Jack Black and I did that Barry Levinson directed years and years ago called Envy.
Yes.
And then years before that, the first job I ever had as an actor on stage around that Miami Vice time was a play in New York, and Chris was in the play. So that was the first time I ever really met him.
I was going to ask you where you go when you think of Walken. Do you go Deer Hunter? Do you go Pulp Fiction? Easily one of the best soliloquies in that film was him with the watch. Or do you go like more cowbell sketch, Bruce Dickinson, who makes gold-plated records by putting his pants on one leg at a time? Like where do you go with Chris Walken when you think of him?
What an amazing career! The breadth of his work,
Right.
Well, here's the thing. He was actually. For me, Deer Hunter is one of my favorite movies of all time. So that scene, the Russian roulette scene, is just seared in my mind. He actually was in a play with my dad, Jerry Stiller, back before I worked with him, called Hurly Burly on Broadway that ran for a couple of years. And I remember seeing that play a number of times. He played a casting director. It's like a bunch of guys in Hollywood. And it was William Hurt and Chris was so good in that. So that's kind of what I think of him on stage. And he's a dancer, too. And you think of the Fat Boy Slim video.
Right.
It's incredible. He started as a child actor. He's been doing it forever.
Well, Severance, you can watch new episodes every single Friday. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you. You don't know Joel and Eveline Eisen, my dad who's passed, my mom who's still alive. Those are my parents. They loved your parents. They never met them, but they watched them and they loved them. Loved Stiller and Mira. Loved Ben.
Thanks, man.
Loved.
Thank you. Yeah. They were the best. They were the best. And it's really nice, though, because going through life, like I do get so much feedback from people who will either say, they were a fan, or like you're saying, your parents, and they had a generational effect, and comedically they just, they were my folks when when I was a kid. I never thought about it, but now it's really nice to feel that.
It's the truth, man. And then obviously, your dad with Seinfeld, and then because I'm such a roast freak, I think it was the roast of your dad where Jeffrey Ross slayed B. Arthur with a joke once upon a time. It's one of my favorite roast moments because Sarah Bernhardt did some sort of thing with your dad on the stage, or she danced for him. I mean, that roast was insane that night, Ben.
Yeah, just to imagine, I haven't watched that since back when, but my dad, just the fact that he even agreed to be roasted, it's just like it's so insane that he even said yes to that, because of knowing him and how he was not like a tough-skinned, put-down comic type of guy. You know what I mean? That just wasn't. He was like such a sweet person.
Right.
You would meet him and he would just be so positive. So just watching him, like, imagine Sandra Bernard doing a dance for him.
Yes.
It's so not my dad. So, yeah, but it's just bad.
Oh, and then that B. Arthur had no idea she was about to catch some shrapnel from Jeff Ross. That was a pretty something. Before I let you go, I want to give you the floor on the Knicks. What do you think? What do you think about the Knicks right now, Ben?
It's not good right now. I think it's not good right now because it's a mess. Now the season's basically, on the downswing. So I don't think, I think any like hope of like the play in is like, I don't feel like that's realistic. I don't know if you do or not. But as a team, they're just, they're, I think, rudderless. I'm saying generalities here. But
it's just
last year was so amazing. It's like been a big letdown this year.
Yeah, the big mystery is Julius Randle. First of all, wearing Bernard King's number is just weird to me. But him last year being emblematic of the city and the gritty comeback and a great story, and then this year, doing the thumbs down and stuff. It's just been weird, It's just been It's been a little weird with him. And
I think it's a very tough environment. Obviously, playing in New York, and it's so up and down, and it happens very quickly. And he had such an amazing year last year that there was so much expectation. And how people react, I don't know how you deal with that, but you have to, figure out some way to deal with it as a player in New York. I think the fans want to rally around him and the team, but it's, like right before the All-Star break, he had a run of like 5 or 6 games where he was playing like he played last year. But the consistency hasn't been there, and who knows? How they can do it at that level consistently, but the consistency thing for the entire team. It's just been like one day, and lately it's totally gone away. But it used to be earlier, even in the season, that like, one day they'd show up and they were playing great, and then the next day it would be back to, on awful games. And that's what's so infuriating for the fans. Like, you just want to give us a little consistency.
Who was your Nick growing up? Who was the guy?
I was around as like an 8-year-old, when like in '73. So I kind of remember, that team. But, for me, Bernard King was definitely my guy. And then there was, Mike Glenn off the bench, singer.
I remember him.
I was a big Mike Glenn fan, and I was always shouting to put Glenn in. I'd go to games with my dad, and I'd be shouting at Holtzman, put Glenn in.
Did he listen? Did he hear you?
He did not. Every once in a while, my dad always would be like, when he would put him in, he's like, he listened to you, he put him in. But he was an amazing shooter. And imagine like Mike Glenn in today's 3-point game, he would have been, pretty impactful.
I remember that. Mike Glenn, he was a precursor to Trent Tucker, right, back in the day. The old Trent. Bernard was my guy too, Ben. One of my favorite New York athletes of all time. Absolutely loved him. Oh, God.
Yeah, and people, I don't know if people remember, but he had an amazing comeback from an injury, where he literally was out, and he came back and he ended up playing in an All-Star game, and had a short but great career in New York.
Could you imagine if him and Ewing actually were healthy together for a long time? Like that would have been the stuff, That would have been the stuff, man. Hey, Ben.
It's been too long. It's been too long with the Knicks,
I agree.
Been a really long stretch.
I agree. Thanks for the call, Ben. Really appreciate it.
All right,
it's been too long. Hopefully we'll do this more often. Anytime. Congrats on Severance.
Thanks for having me, man.
Congrats
Great talking to you,
You
man.
bet. Congrats on Severance. It's a great show. Everyone should watch it. New episodes on Apple TV. Episode 4 you can catch on Friday. First 3 are available for you to stream. That's Ben Stiller at Red Hour Ben. I follow him. You should too. Right here on the Rich Eisen Show. That was dynamite, man.
That was awesome.
Dynamite. Just love chatting with him. That was a lot of fun. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.